So today we're going to be looking at operators, all right? And if you were to print out the lecture notes from today, it would be a nice little display or sort of cheat sheet of all the operators we're going to look at. Some of these will be easy to understand, some will be a little bit trickier, but they're all pretty straightforward for the most part, all right? So the first one is the easiest one, and we're going to do arithmetic operators, okay? And they're very easy. It's plus and minus and divide and multiply, and then a couple weird ones. The modulus operator, the increment operator, and the decrement operator, okay? So even those of you who don't have a programming background, I'm pretty sure you can take a wild guess at what those four do, right? They add things together, they subtract things, they divide things, and they multiply things, okay? Now, we can actually, rather than writing code here in our JavaScript file, we can actually use the console to do some little quick and simple things here. So, if I open this up in Chrome and I right-click, go down to Inspect, and go in the console, we can actually put JavaScript code right here, okay? So I can say like 5 plus 9, and it'll tell me that's 14, all right? If I were to do that in the code, for now, what we've learned how to do is alert that out, right? I could say alert 5 plus 9, right? I could do that. And that would spit out 14, okay? We're going to do some of the math stuff just over here on the console, though. It's just easier and quicker. So I think you guys okay with these four, right? We good with those? Plus, minus, divide, multiply? Okay, let's talk about modulus for just a minute. Modulus takes us back to the early days of our learning long division when we were kids. You guys remember when you had a little thing that looks kind of like this, where it would be like, I don't know, like 4 divided by 495 or something like that. You guys remember this kind of division? And then you had to use a little divide, multiply, subtract, bring down. Do you remember that? Just ringing any bells from like 3rd or 4th grade or whatever?
Just normal long division?
Yeah, just long division, yep. So divide, multiply, subtract, bring down was a little thing you'd have to remember. My math teacher taught us to remember dumb math, stupid book. DMSB, divide, multiply, subtract, bring down. So step one, right, divide. I would divide 4 into the first number here, 4, and we would find that goes in 1 time. That's the divide part, right? Then multiply. 1 times 4 equals 4. So I put that right here. And then we would subtract. So we'd draw a little line here, and I'd subtract 4 minus 4, right? The number here from this number. And of course that's 0. And then we'd bring down, that's the B, right? I'd bring down that 9. And then we'd start all over again. I'd divide the 4 into the 9, and that would go in twice. And then we'd take 2 times 8. 2 times 4 is 8. So that's our subtraction part. And then we'd subtract. All right, that was our multiplication part. Then we'd subtract, and we'd get the number 1. And then we'd bring down the 5, right? And we'd do it all over again, and we'd find out that 4 goes in there 3 times. 3 times 4 is 12. 12. And we have a remainder of 3. Right? Everybody remember that? Okay. So that answer could be represented a couple ways. 123 with a remainder of 3, or 123.75, right? 123 3/4. You guys seen that kind of notation before? Does that make sense? Okay. So first question for you. Java folks, pay particular attention because it's different from Java in what we're about to talk about. And that is, if I were to say to you in Java, what is 5 divided by 4? What would the answer be? 1. Just 1 in Java. Not so in JavaScript. JavaScript, 5 divided by 4 is 1.25, okay? Even though we started with integers, we ended up with a floating point because Java is a loosely typed language. JavaScript, I should say, is a loosely typed language. Java, if you're doing integer math, it's integer math. And integer math, there is no decimal point. It just truncates that value, okay? So if I were to take 495 divided by 4, it will actually give me 123.75, okay? Which is the answer we got just a second ago manually. Okay, so we okay with that on the division? All right, now, here's what modulus does. That's the little percent symbol. I know most of you already know this. The percent symbol, so we would have 495 divided by 4. That's the first problem we did. 495 modulus 4 is exactly the same question. It's what's 495 divided by 4. The difference is it doesn't return what it is divided by. It returns only the remainder, okay? 495 modulus 4, the answer is 3. It returns just the remainder, okay? So it does this whole math here, and then it returns what that remainder is. That's it. So 495 modulus 4 is 3, okay? So when I say 495 modulus 4, I'm really saying 495 divided by 4, give me the remainder, okay? You good on that one? Okay, so I'm going to clear all this mess out of here. So, again, if you already have a programming background, you already know these next two I'm about to do, but if not, this is good to make sure you understand this. So, we have a variable, let's say it's called x, and it's equal to 10. And somewhere later in the code, I need to increase its value. So I want it to be x equals x plus 5. So if I want to increment x by 5, I can do this, x equals x plus 5. And so let's test this out right here. Alert x, and then I'll alert it again. And so what will happen, the first time, we create a variable called x, give it the value 10, we print it out in a little pop-up box, then we increase it by 5, and we print it out again. So if this is all correct, we will get 10. It's kind of small, but it's there. And then the next one, we'll say 15, all right? We just incremented the value of x by 5. Well, there's a shortcut for that, and it is x plus plus, okay? That's the same thing as saying x equals x plus 5. All right, I'm sorry, I apologize. Let me clarify that. X equals x plus 1, okay? Not plus 5, okay? X equals x plus 1 is the same thing as x plus plus, okay? Sorry about the confusion there. I'll show you how to do x equals x plus 5 in a few minutes, okay? But for now, x plus plus is just incrementing by 1. Okay, that's the same thing as that. Okay, it's just a shortcut. Make sense? Okay, so if I say x plus plus, then the new value of x is now 11, all right? What if I say x minus minus? What do you suppose that does? Yeah, it's the same thing as x equals x minus 1, right? So if I alert it again, so here we go. It starts at 10. I do x plus plus, it becomes 11. I do x minus minus, it goes back to 10. All right? Those are all the arithmetic operators. Okay? Those are all the mathematical things that we're going to deal with. Right? Any questions about any of those? They're relatively straightforward. The only one that's a little tricky is the modulus, and even that's not that hard. And the modulus, there's a lot of different uses for that, but the main one that we'll use in this class is maybe to see if a number is even, right? So those who are not programmers, I don't remember who that is, how would you suppose you could use the modulus operator to figure out if a number is even? What do we know about even numbers? And what they're divisible by? Yeah, all even numbers are divisible by 2, right? So if I were to do some even number modulus 2, what would the answer be? What's the remainder if I divide an even number by 2? 0, right? Any number divided by 2, that's any even number divided by 2, remainder is 0. So if I have any number 10 modulus 2, that will be 0. If I have, 108 modulus 2, that will be 0. Any even number modulus 2 will equal 0. So if I wanted to figure out if a number's even, I could use that little trick. So if the user enters a number x, and I say x modulus 2, if that result is 0, so if I said if x modulus 2 equals 0, then that would tell me it's an even number. And I could do something based on it being even or not even. Okay? All right, any questions so far? Good? Okay, let's take a look at the next batch here. These are the assignment operators. And the assignment operators, most of these you should make pretty simple sense, I think. We'll explain each one though. And the multiplication one, divide equals, and percent equals. All right. So I think the first one we already know. We've done it, we've looked at it, we talked about it last time, right? It's var, I'm gonna quit with the caps, man. Var x equals 10. That's me assigning, the assignment operator is assigning 10 to the variable called x. That's that one. Okay, it's not an equal sign, it's an assignment operator. That's pretty straightforward. We good with that? Okay. Now, let's alert our x out there. That's going to print out 10 in our little pop-up box. This next one here, plus equals, this is the tricky one I was talking about a minute ago where we'd say x equals x plus 5. Okay, there's a shortcut for that. Instead of saying x equals x plus 5, I can actually say x plus equals 5. That's just shorthand. They both work, and if the other one makes more sense to you, then that's fine to use that, but this is shorthand for that. So if I alert that out, so my first thing when I run this program, it's going to pop up the number 10 in the box. It's going to increment x by 5, and it's going to print out the new result, which should be 15. And there we go. Good? Okay. The same thing is true with x minus equals. X minus equals 3, for example. What are we going to get when I alert that out? 12. Right? Because we incremented it by 5, right? Good. Yep. So that's going to give us 7. And then I'm going to say x multiply equal 2. Did I say 7? I meant 12. I meant 12. I don't know what I said, but I meant 12. You were correct when you said 12. So now I'm going to say, in fact, I'm going to do divide equals 2. So what's that going to give us? Yep, it's going to give us 6. And then, and we'll walk through this in a second. And then x multiply equal 3 should give us 18. Okay. You notice that every time I try to close my parenthesis, I hit a 0 instead of the parenthesis. It's like I'm not hitting my shift key hard enough or something. I don't know what's going on. Okay, so let's take a look at what's happening here. Step 1, create a variable called x, put the number 10 in it. Print that out in a pop-up box. Next, increment that variable by 5. Print it out. That's going to print 15. Next, decrement that by 3. Print it out. That'll be 12. Next, divide it by 2, and that'll give it the value 6. Print it out. And then multiply by 3, that'll give it the value 18. Print it out. So let's see if this works. Let's move this over here so we can kind of see. Okay, let's refresh the page. Starts off at 10. It's now, as soon as I hit OK, right now it's just waiting on line 6 in the code. It's waiting for something to happen. The moment I hit OK, it's going to increment. It's going to run line 8 and increment it and run line 9 and print it. Now it's waiting for a response. It's going to decrement it and then print it as soon as I hit OK. It's going to drop it down to 2. Or we have a bug. What happened? Where'd my little pop-up go? What's that? Oh, I didn't save it. Thank you. I thought I did. Good catch. Okay, let's do that again. Let's get back to where we were, 15, and then as soon as I hit OK, it's going to run lines 11 and 12. It's down to 12. And now it's as soon as I hit OK, it's going to run lines 14 and 15, which is going to be dividing it by 2 and then printing it. And then the last one, as soon as I hit OK, it's going to multiply it by 3 and print it, and we get 18, and then we're done. Now, this is tricky syntax at first to wrap your head around. We'll talk about the modulus one in a minute. But it's really not that hard. All that we're saying is this. Everybody take a look on the screen for just a second. In this case right here, I'm simply saying do the math of whatever number is involved and then assign it to whatever variable's involved. That's literally all I'm saying, right? So whatever, I'm just saying take x and add 5 to it, then assign it to x. That's all I'm saying. Okay, does that make sense? Any questions about those? We'll look at modules in a second, but any questions about those 4 or 5 or whatever? 4? Yeah.
So why wouldn't we like just say like x plus 5? Why do you have to have the equal sign in it?
Because if I just say x plus 5, I've not told it to make the value of x equal to 5. I've just said,
Tell it where to put it.
yeah, I have to have a place to store it, right? Yeah, I have to have a place to put it. So I could, like maybe I had another variable, I could say variable y equals x plus 5, but I have to, just adding it is one thing, the math happened, but now where that new value, I need to store it somewhere. And so I have to tell the computer to store it in x or in some other variable. So now let's look at this weird one here, the modulus one. And it works exactly the same way, right? It just, for some reason, this one trips people up a little bit. I'm not sure why. So if I said x modulus equals, we'll say 3, okay? What will the value of x be when I'm done? Will be 1, correct. So it's going to run the operation x modulus 3, which is 1, right? 3 goes into 10, 3 times the remainder of 1. And then it says assign whatever the result is to x, okay? So if I say alert that, and did I save it? No. So it starts off with 10, and then when I do x modulus equals 3, it reassigns it to the value 1, okay? All right, so questions about assignment operators. We good? Next up, comparison operators. Now, the comparison operators are probably one of the easier ones to wrap your head around because you've been doing these since third grade math or whatever. There's a couple new ones thrown in the mix, and I'll explain those. But they are equals, triple equals. Look, I can clean up 1.5 gigs of space or 1.15 gigs of space. Maybe later. And then those two I'm going to explain in a few minutes, okay? Then we have not equals. Now, when you guys were taking like grade school math and you learned about the greater than or less than sign, right? The alligator eating the bigger number, right? Okay. What did you guys use for not equal? It wasn't this, right? It was this. Remember that? That's not equals, okay? Does everybody remember that? Really? You guys don't remember that from grade school? You guys remember these, right? Greater than and less than. You've never seen that? Not equal to?
There's a line to the equals.
Yeah, that's what I've always seen.
Really?
Equal sign with a line through it.
That's the one I learned, and that's the one my kids are doing in their classes. That's weird. All right, that by the way works in databases, in a lot of database programming, that not equal sign. But we're doing this. Okay, this is what we use, not equal. All right, and then we have the greater than, the less than, and normally in the less than or equal to it's the less than symbol, the line under it, which we can't really do that. So we do less than or equal to and greater than or equal to, okay? And they do exactly what you think. It's just comparing the values. So I think that these four you guys are probably okay with, right? I'm just gonna compare two numbers, like I might ask the question, you know, if x is greater than, you know, 8, do something or whatever, right? We'll look at some examples in a minute. The ones I wanna make sure we are clear on are these two, okay? So, the other day we looked at an if statement where we were looking to see if the name entered by the user was cool or whatever, right? So let's take a look at a different scenario here. I can have, we'll say var x equals 10. And notice it's in quotes, okay? So if it's in quotes, what does that mean? Yeah, it's a string, okay? Now, if I said this, if x equals 10, then alert, yep. Okay, let's run that. Yep. So look at that though. That's a string called 10. That's a number called 10. In Java, you can't even make that comparison. You get an error for even trying to make that comparison. Okay? But in JavaScript, we can make that comparison. And what we're seeing is that yes, the values are equal. However, if I use a triple equal sign, let's do an else statement here. Nope. Nope. Okay, so here's what's happening. The equal sign is comparing the values. The double equal sign, I should say, is comparing the values. Is the value of x equals quote 10 the same as the value of 10? Yeah, they're the same thing. But are they really equal? That's what the triple equal is. Are they really equal? And now we're looking at the data type as well, okay? In the first version, we're just looking at the value. In this version, we're looking at the data type too, okay? So the triple equal sign is like, I'm not 100% sure if it's actually doing a binary comparison. It may be, but at any rate, it's double checking the data type and the value itself, okay? All right, questions about those? Okay, if you look inside the modules here for the lecture notes for today, get rid of that so it stops spinning. There we go. Arithmetic operators, assignment operators, comparison operators. Next is bitwise. We're not going to cover those today. All right, and the only ones we are going to cover in this class are these two, the or and the and logical or bitwise operators. And we're going to actually use the and bitwise operator when we build the tic-tac-toe game. We're not going to cover those today, okay? This deals with binary math and bit shifting and stuff that's a little bit beyond the scope of this class, but we will use a little bit of it in our tic-tac-toe game. So the last one we have that we're going to care about today, the logical operators, all right? So, logical. And there are 3 of those that we're going to look at. Okay? This is called the and we talked about this the other day briefly. And this is the or, and again, the or is the pipe symbol that's on your slash on your keyboard. And then this is the not, which is the exclamation point, all right? So let's take this example here. I have a variable called x equals 10, or called x that's equal to 10. And I'm asking right now, is this true? Everybody see that? I'm asking, is x equal to 10 true? Now here's something that a lot of even skilled programmers may not be aware of. And that is that line of code, line 8 right there, that will actually evaluate to a literal true or a literal false, okay? It will evaluate to true or false. In this scenario, what does it evaluate to? True, because x is equal to 10. So this will evaluate to true. So what we're really asking here is this. If this is true, then say yep, otherwise say nope, okay? Well, we can do a little weird thing here where I can say this. Okay, now, just for the record, let me copy that real quick. Doing that is the same thing as doing this. They're both the same thing, logically, okay? I'm saying if x is not equal to 10, then I'm going to print out yep. Maybe I should say not 10 and is 10, right? If x is not equal to 10, then print it's not 10. I can also, instead of doing it that way, I can do this. And then I want to show you this syntax because it's useful in other contexts. Okay, so this syntax here, here's what it says. I'm looking at is x equal to 10, and then I'm saying it's not that. Okay, so in other words, if it's not 10, then this is true. If it is 10, then this is false. Make sense? You have any questions about that? So if I run that right now, what result am I going to get?
10, or is 10.
Yeah, it's going to say it is 10, yeah. Yay, it is 10, okay? If I put 5 here, now it says not 10. 5 is not 10, okay? All right, how are we feeling there? That one's a little tricky. Okay, the other thing we looked at the other day, I'm just going to quickly write this out because we've already seen it. Let's do if x is equal to 10 or x is equal to 20 or x is equal to 42 or x is equal to 9, then alert, yay, I like that number. We did it with my name the other day, but it's the same idea. Otherwise, alert, boo, don't like that number. Okay, and let's change this from a hard-coded number to user input. Enter a number. And now the user will enter a number, and then it will be compared to 10, 20, 42, or 9. And if it's any one of those numbers, for whatever reason that I chose them, it will say, yay, that's a good number. All right, so 10, 20, 42, or 9. So if I refresh, enter a number, 10, says, yay, I like that number. 20, yay, I like that number. 42, yay, I like that number. 9, yay, I like that one. And any other number, boo, I don't like that number. Okay? That's using the logical OR operator. Now I could put this here. This is the logical AND operator. Before I do that, let's make sure we understand how this evaluates. I'm asking, is this true, or this true, or this true, or this? Okay, so let's break that down a little bit. Let's say that the user puts in the number 42, all right? So now I'm just going to type in some extra text down below here. Is this first part true? Okay, so that's false, right? Okay, is this one true? Facile. Is this one true? Okay, because again, the user entered 42. Is this one true? Okay, that one's true. How about this one? How about this one?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Would it not go that far?
It wouldn't, but that wasn't my question. My question was, is that true or false? Okay. All right, so looking at this scenario here, what I'm asking you is one of these true? That's what I'm asking, right? So I'm asking, is that true, or is that true, or is that true, or is that true? Well, as we can see, one of them is true. So that's all I'm saying. If any one of these is true, then this whole big sentence evaluates to true. All right? That make sense? As long as one of them is true, then the whole thing is true. Because I'm not claiming they all have to be 10 and they have to be and 20 and 42 and 9. Just one of them has to exist. All right? Now, Well, let's leave those numbers there for a minute. I'll comment them out so they don't run. Okay. If I were to change this to and, those truth values are still correct. False, false, true, false. The difference is the whole thing will evaluate to false, because the question I'm asking is this true, and is this true, and is this true, and is this true? And obviously that is not the case, because 3 of them are not true. So this whole thing would evaluate to false now. So if I ran that, and I put 10, even though that's one of my good numbers, it says I don't like that number, because that whole thing is false. Okay, does that make sense? Questions about that? Now, obviously, it's impossible for x to be equal to 10 and 20 and 42 and 9, right? That's impossible. But something like this is possible. I could have var y equals prompt, enter another number, and I could have something like this. Y equals 20. That. Right, I could say if x is 10 and y is 20. Then let's just do yay. So that's a legitimate scenario, right? It is possible to have x be 10 and y be 20. Is it not? Can we have that? Does that exist? Could it exist? Yeah. So here we go. X is 10, y is 20. It says yay. Now, what if I put x is 20 and y is 10? It does not work. Okay? All right, I know that's a lot of stuff to take in. How do we feel about it? We have any questions? Make sense? All right. Okay, the next thing we're going to look at, we're going to add to our skill sets of things that we can create. We're going to look at making a function. We talked about functions in the past, okay? This prompt is a function that's built in part of JavaScript. Alert is a function that's part of JavaScript. We're going to make our own function, okay? So I'm going to clear all this code out. I'm going to clear out these little things here. And now, let's say we want a simple function that has one job. It's going to accept in 2 values, and it's going to add those values up and return the addition of the 2. So if I pass it in a 2 and a 3, it'll return a 5. Okay, that's it. Simple function. All right? When you're going to create a function in JavaScript, you type the word function. And then you give it a name. And we'll call this add, whatever, let's call it add. Okay? And then in those parentheses, I will put in variables for I'll put in what we call parameters, right? And so I'll put in, I want an x and y, let's say, okay? That's going to be the first number and the second number. So what's going to happen, and we'll put the code in here in just a second, okay? What's going to happen, somewhere in my code, I'm actually going to say this. I'm going to say add 5, 3, all right? When I say add 5, 3, what JavaScript will do, will call this function right here, and it'll pass that 5 to that x, and it'll pass that 3 to that y. That's what will happen. Now, x will be equal to 5, y will be equal to 3, and then I'll do something with those 2 values. So what's the goal of this function here?
Return a value.
Yeah, it's returning what value? X plus y, right? So it's literally to return x plus y. That's it. That function now completely works. And so if I run this, I need to alert that out, right? I can't just say add 5 plus 3. I need to alert whatever that result is. Okay? So now, even if you're an experienced programmer, make sure you pay attention to this part here. This is tricky. This add 5, 3 will literally magically turn into the number 8. And it'll be exactly the same thing as me saying alert 8, okay? add 5 comma 3 is the same thing as 8. So it will actually change into that. So it will alert that out. So I'm saying call this function, pass in the number 5 to here, the number 3 to here, then return that and that added together. And then alert whatever that result is to a pop-up box. Okay? So here we go, and we get 8. All right? Now, let's make this a little bit more useful. Right? We do not, if I just put a 5 and a 3 there, that's kind of silly, but what if I took in some values from the users? So we'll say var num1 equals prompt enter number 1. Enter first number is probably better. And then we'll say enter second number. Okay? Now, if I want to alert out the math of the two numbers entered by the user, what would I change on line 5?
5 and the 3,
What would I put instead of the 5 and the 3?
the 2 variables made.
Yeah, I'd put num1 right here. And num2 right there. Whoops, num2 right there. That make sense? Seeing some blank stares out there, folks. How do we feel about that? What questions do we have? You good? Okay. So the user is going to enter a number. Whatever they enter, which we'll test in a minute, will be assigned to this variable called num1. They'll enter another number. It'll be assigned to this variable called num2. I will then call my addition function, passing in whatever number they entered, comma, whatever number they entered. Whatever that number is will be assigned to x. Whatever that number is will be assigned to y, and then I will return x plus y. All right, we good? So let's try it. First number is 10, second number is 99. It returns 1099. Now what's wrong with that?
It's just combining.
It's concatenating them, right? Okay, why is it doing that?
It's adding like a string.
Yes, it's treating them like a string, okay? So when I enter in a prompt here, it assumes that it's actually a string, okay? It's assuming it's a string because it's a prompt and that takes in text, all right? If I just put in a number and I print the number out and I do comparisons with it, that's all fine. But if I actually want to treat it mathematically like a number, it will not work. Now, there's a way around that, okay? And I'm not going to tell you what it is right now. I want you guys to look it up, okay? See if you can figure it out. Okay, you may need it for one of your upcoming assignments, okay? But there is a way around that. All right, so any questions so far? All right. Oh, yeah, sorry.
So what is the add, like, how come we have to leave the x plus y down there and then someone says add up there?
Well, this is me creating a function called add. And I'm calling that function. This is a very simple function, right? Most of the time a function is very complicated, has a whole bunch of other stuff going on here. And so, yeah, I could just as easily put right here, I could say x plus y, I could just do that. That would be totally, or not x plus y, but num1 plus num2. I could totally do that. And that's fine to do that. The reason for this, though, is with a function, you're able to reuse that code block over and over again, and I can continue to pass in numbers to it. And again, with a simple function like this, it doesn't demonstrate the value of a function, just that it exists, okay? So what we're gonna do is actually look at the birthday program and make a function that would do the birthday program. And so that maybe will help a little bit in the understanding of it. But the idea is you can create a function and it's just this block of code that does whatever you want. You pass it in a couple parameters and it'll do some manipulation and then send out a result, okay? In this case, it's a very simple one that could be done other ways. All right, so let's say we have, let's leave that function there. We'll have another function that's called birthday birthday message, something like that, okay? And the birthday message, it takes in two parameters, and we'll call one parameter like your name and one parameter your age, okay? These are variables here. Notice I'm not saying var name, right? That's not needed. You can just say the name of the variables. And then in here, I can actually say, let's go with, let's say return happy birthday name plus period you are age years old. Okay? There's your happy birthday program, right? Now, let's start here with enter name. Oh, what just happened? Enter your age. And I can leave these variables named like that if I want, whatever. We'll go N and A, whatever. Doesn't matter, okay? And now, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to call the birthday message function, birthday message, and I'll pass in the name and the age. Okay? Let's go ahead and kill this function. So let's see if we understand what's happening here. The user enters their name, it's stored in a variable called N. They enter their age, it's stored in a variable called A. Then I call the birthday message, passing in their name and their age. The name goes to this variable here, age goes to this variable here, and then it returns this whole thing, happy birthday, Jeff, you're 46 years old, and that gets put right here, and that's what gets alerted out, okay? It's a little bit more involved than the math we just did, but let's take a look at it. What's your name? Beavis. Beavis. Your age, 88. Happy birthday, Beavis, you're 88 years old. Now, why is this useful? Okay. What we did in the past was this. Instead of calling the function, we did that, right? And we did, it would be N and A, right? That make sense? Okay, let's say that I was going to do this with 2 or 3 users, all right? So maybe I'm going to have another user right after that. We'll do this whole thing again. And they're going to alert this out. So maybe we're going to get 2 users, and we'll call this name 2 and age 2 and name 2 and age 2. All right? So ignoring the function for a minute, here's what happens. I run it. Works fine. Beavis, 66, and Butthead, 77. Whoops, 77. Okay, sorry about that. Right? So that's fine. It works fine, and the message is there. But notice what's happened here. We now have duplicate code. This message here is duplicate of this message. Well, what if I wanted to change it to not say happy birthday, you are X years old? What if I just wanted to say happy birthday, you are just age, right? Not years old. So I wanted it to just say this. Well, now what do I have to do? I have to change it in multiple places. I have to change it here as well, right? And if I had 3 or 4 of these, I'd have to change it in all 3 or 4 of those places multiple times. Whereas if I use a function, I only have to change it in the function, and that's it. I wouldn't have to change it anywhere else, right? So now this will work. So it's Beavis, 3, Butthead, 6, 5, whatever, okay? But if I were to have used a function, changing this one function will change it for all places that call the function. So let's try it that way. I would just say birthday message N comma A, and I would say, I'll get you in just a second, birthday message N1 comma A1 or A2. Now what will happen, and let's put these together, I could have as many of these as I want, And if I want to change what the message is, I just change it one time in the function, and it changes it for every time I call that function, for every time, right? So if I do another one, and we'll call this N3, A3, right, they'll all three get the same message. Just quickly run it, refresh, and we'll have Beavis is this age, and Butthead is that age, and Stuart is that age, and they all work, they all have the same message. If I ever want to change this message, maybe I wanted it to be in Spanish or something. Feliz cumpleaños. How do you spell it? Like that? Did I spell it right? Anybody who speaks Spanish, did I spell that right? Okay. We'll leave the rest of it in English, so that's about the extent of my Spanish. Okay? But I changed it one time, and now it will say the same message for everybody, right? Okay, so if I refresh it, now when I say Beavis, it now says it in Spanish. If I were to do that for all the other ones, I would have had to change it every single time. Okay, does that make sense? All right, Sabbath, you had a question a second ago?
Yeah, I was just asking if the order of the code mattered in JavaScript, but I just looked it up and it doesn't, like unless it's in a function.
What do you mean by order of the code?
Like it's not obviously object oriented, like you know, like with a function you can put it down here and call it up here before, it doesn't read in sequence.
It actually does read in sequence.
Um,
So this function, you're right, I can move this function up here if I wanted to,
it doesn't matter.
and that doesn't matter. However, it's still reading in sequence. It's seeing the function here, but then it reads that, it does that line, then it does that line, then it does that line. It does go in order. And this line just happens to call this code up here, and then when it's done, it returns back to this spot, and then it continues reading on in sequence, right? Yeah, yeah.
So if we call the same thing, like say we did the first block of code right here, and like said something else, which one would it enter?
So are you saying move this below the alert like this?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so what would happen in this case, if I did that, there would be no n, right, when I call this function right here. So then this goes back to the order does matter. So it would ask for your age, and I would put in my age, and then it would immediately just say, happy birthday, and it would be blank, because there was no name passed in, and then it would say you are 42 years old or whatever. So let me clear this stuff out here. All right, and then if I refresh it, so it says enter your name, and did I not save it? I was not expecting that. Let's refresh that. There we go. Okay, so I refresh it, I enter my age, and now it doesn't ask me for my name, and it says, happy birthday, null, because there was no value given for name. And so what happened when that function got called, for this variable n here, that got passed up to name right here, literally null was passed up. There's nothing there, because we hadn't gotten that variable just yet. Okay? Does that answer what you're asking? Yeah, all right. All right. All right, other questions? So functions are very, very useful in programming in general. And later, when we build our tic-tac-toe game, our code's going to look pretty clean. It's going to be just a bunch of functions. Like we're going to have a function that's called, players or something like that. And we're going to have a function that manages like, whose turn maybe. And a function that's like draws the game board, draw the board, or whatever, right? And we'll have a whole bunch of functions that inside of each of those functions will be a whole bunch of code, and we'll actually be calling it from our HTML, okay? To build the board, to play the game, and all this stuff. So there's a lot of stuff that functions make your code very useful and reusable, okay? All right, other questions? All right, now, then if you looked at the lecture title here, it's called Operators, Functions, MadLibs, okay? MadLibs, we did a MadLib on Monday, or on Tuesday, right? We did the little game where we filled out the blanks. The MadLib program, which is due for you guys on the 11th, which is a week from Sunday, it's exactly the same as your happy birthday program. Do you guys see that? It's exactly the same thing. Happy birthday program is enter your name, enter your age, print, happy birthday, you are this age. The MadLib program is enter a noun, enter a verb, enter an adjective, enter this, enter that, and enter like 10 different things and concatenate it all together, and you tell some story. Once upon a time, there was some noun who did some verb, right? And you've concatenated all that in and you've built your story, which you're going to write yourself, right? I don't care how, you just write a silly story, it doesn't matter. I'm not grading your story, okay? All right, does that make sense what the MadLib assignment is? There's some details you want to look at when you go in there, a minimum amount of verbs and nouns and adjectives you have to do. But that's the basic premise of the MadLib game. Now, the goal of those two assignments is to get you using variables, get you taking input, get you concatenating strings, and get you creating output, okay? Any questions about those two things? Yeah?
Output to a paragraph?
Output to an alert box is fine. If you want to do it onto the HTML page, you can, and we will learn how to do that later, but it's not required for this assignment. This will be the last assignment where that's not required. All the future ones it will be required. But I haven't taught you guys that, so if you want to figure it out on your own or you already know, that's totally fine. And you will get extra mile points for doing that on your own if you want. Now, let's talk about the birthday program for just a minute. One of my students, I don't know if she didn't give me permission to tell everybody this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Hopefully she's okay with it. She told me about her happy birthday program, and she said for her extra mile, she made the program tell you what your zodiac sign was. But that was a cool idea. That's I haven't looked at the code yet, but that's going to be a pretty gnarly if statement, right? If your birthday is between these dates, then print, Aquarius or Scorpio or Leo or whatever, right? So I thought that was a cool idea, and that's a good way to go the extra mile. And it's all JavaScript too. JavaScript extra mile, so that was nice. Okay, last thing we're going to touch on, and we will come back to this later. We will loop back to this later. We're going to talk about loops, okay? So check this out. Let's do, so let's kill all this stuff here. New code. All right, and we're going to go back to our simple little original program, which is var number equals, let's go with num, equals prompt, enter a number, okay? I'm going to give you a little taste of what your guessing game might be like, okay? Now, I'm going to just create a number, we'll call it the computer's number, and it's 15, okay? Now, later when we write our guessing game program, that number is going to be randomly generated. But for right now, let's just imagine that the computer knows some magical number 15 that we don't know, okay? So we're going to make an if statement that says if num equals computer num, then alert you win, okay? Else alert try again. Okay, let's move this. We're going to put this down here. Okay, so what we're going to do, I'm going to create this variable called num right there. I'm going to just create the variable called num, and then down here, I'm going to, let's see, how do I want to do this? Let's do this. Yeah, I'm gonna back up here, guys, because I want to make a loop. That's what I want to do. So let's do this. There's several different types of loops, right? There's a while loop, there's a do while loop, there's a for loop. We're going to use a while loop, all right? And again, this is just a quick little crash course. We're going to go in depth later, but I'm going to say this: while num is not equal to computer num, then we're gonna say, enter a number, okay? Inside of here, if computer num, well, let's just stop right there, okay? That's all we're gonna do for the minute. Sorry, I'm making this up off the top of my head. I wasn't planning on doing this, but since we have a little bit of time, I thought I'd throw this out. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. We have variable num, which has no value at the moment. We have a computer num of 15. I'm gonna say if the number here is not equal to this, then ask for another number, okay? So let's run this. Oh, I refreshed the wrong thing. Okay, enter a number, 10. And it just says enter a number again, 9, 5. It's just gonna keep doing that until I enter the number 15. Enter number 15 and it stops, okay? It just continued to loop. So let's analyze that code for a second, okay? While this number does not match this number, do this. It's that simple, okay? That's all there is to it. While num is not equal to this. So this number happens to be 15. So while the number that is entered is not equal to 15, reassign the value of number with whatever the user enters again. Okay, what is the value of num the very first time this loop runs? Yeah, nothing or null or something, right? So is null equal to 15? It's not. So because it's not, it's going to get a new value. So it's going to keep looping. It's going to say num is equal to whatever the new number I enter. And it's going to just do that forever until I make the correct guess. Okay? Does everybody understand that basic idea? That's a loop. Okay, there's lots of different types of loops and ways you would use them, but this is a simple, small example. And again, as long as I'm not entering, I could enter a letter, doesn't matter. As long as I'm not entering 15, that will keep looping forever. Okay? This is not the end-all discussion for loops, right? We're going to talk about them more in depth later, but I just wanted to throw it out there since we had a few extra minutes, just as another thing to think about, okay? Yeah?
So is that kind of like how passwords work?
Tell me what you mean by that.
So like you try to log on to some website that requires a password
Yep.
for you to sign in, and it pulls your password from it, like your username and your password from a database and make sure they're matching it.
Yep.
Until they're matching it.
Yes, that's exactly right. So the question was, is that how a password were working? Yeah. This value right here would be yanked out of a database, and it would. So let's just do this. Let's change this code. Password is equal to duck livers. All right, and we'll say user pass, and I'm going to say is user pass equal to the password, and we'll say enter your password, okay, and user pass, okay, something like that. That's exactly, I mean, it wouldn't be with an alert box like we're doing, but yeah, it would be this kind of thing. And there's a little more to the code to make sure it's encrypted and secure and all that, but the general idea is absolutely correct. You're comparing two values and you're doing it in a loop. Yeah. Now, that depends on the site too. The site may not allow you more than one chance, or you only get two chances or whatever, right? So, but now if we refresh it, enter your password, and I say chicken livers, that's not the correct password. Notice it just says enter your password. Maybe we want to be a little bit more robust and say, the first time we want to say prompt, quote, enter your password. But the second time we want to say, invalid password, try again. Something like that, right? So the first time this runs through, it's going to say, enter your password, and we will enter our password, and it will be assigned to user pass. Then we'll compare what we entered, rather than just comparing nothing, to the actual password. which would have been pulled from a database. And then it'll say, while they don't match, say invalid, try again. So let's run that and refresh it. It says enter your password, and we say chicken. And, all right, let me make sure I really refreshed it. Try it again. Chicken. All right, did I save it? What am I missing here, folks? Make sure all my variables are correct. Should have worked. To your password. There we go. I just didn't refresh it, I guess. All right, so let's start that over again because I just want to so you can see it from the beginning. Okay, here we go. So enter your password, and I'm going to say chicken livers, which is incorrect, and it says invalid password. Try again. Okay, this time I'll say duck livers, which is correct, and it lets me in, right? So refresh it again. If I put duck livers the first time, the loop never even ran. Okay, so right off the bat, I put in duck livers correctly the first time. Then this said, if they don't match, do this. Well, they did match, so this code never even ran. Okay? Good question. I'm glad you brought that up. Other questions? Feeling okay? It's a lot of stuff, guys. Okay? I'm tempted to throw a for loop at you right now. Let's just do this just for fun. Okay? Again, we're going to learn loops more in depth later. So let's do a quick for loop. A while loop is most of the time used when you're not sure how many times you need to loop. Like, I don't know how many times they're going to enter the wrong password, right? I just need to loop until they enter the correct one. A for loop is when you say, no, loop this number of times, usually, okay? So, for example, it looks like this, for, and then we need a counter, right? We're going to start a counter. Let's call it counter. And then as long as the counter is less than however many times we want to loop, so let's say 10 times, then we increment the counter, okay? That's the syntax for a for loop. I'll give you more details on it later, but I'm throwing a bunch of spaghetti at the wall. It's hoping some of it sticks, and so that when you see it again in detail, you'll remember some of the things we talked about today, okay? But what this means is do whatever's in this block 10 times. That's what this means. So I'm going to just say alert, hello. What's it going to do? It's going to alert hello 10 times. Okay, here we go. Hello 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay? We could get tricky if we wanted and print out the actual counter so we see where it's at. So here's what's happening. I'm saying start a counter at 0, and again, this could be anything. Typically, we use I in the industry. That's what most people use. It stands for for incrementer, but it can be literally any variable. We set I equal to 0. Then we do a comparison. We say, is I less than 10? If it is, run this code. After you run this code and increment. Then go to this line and ask, is it still less than 10? If it is, run this, and then increment. And it's going to keep doing that until you've reached a point where this is no longer true. So run it. 0, 1, 2. You can see it keeps incrementing as we go. It'll never actually hit 10. It'll be done. Because what happened when it was 9, it incremented it to 10, and then it said, is I less than 10? Well, 10 is not less than 10, so it never ran the code. Now, I know a lot of you guys have a background in programming in Java, and a lot of this stuff was very familiar, and so I know it's maybe a little drier for you to listen to than if you've never heard this stuff before. But hopefully, there's a lot of this stuff, you will see it again for sure. Not hopefully, but you will see it again for sure. I'm just hoping that seeing it today, little bits and pieces, will sort of plant some seeds. That was kind of the goal, okay? Any questions about anything we covered? Feeling all right?